But I'm talking about this corruption, folks. This corruption is everywhere. Check this out. This is from the United States Postal Service Office of Inspector General. This report is from last year, but is just now being exposed. What is it? It's the Post Office report, the final report into contract driver Jesse Morgan's claims that he hauled trailers of ballots from New York to Pennsylvania in late October of 2020.
This all happened on October 21st, all right? So October 21st, I went into work as normal. I picked up my truck, Lancaster, Pennsylvania. I got my slip, my ticket, whatever you want to call it. A slip of ticket is basically something that it has the date, it has the time, it has when I'm leaving, it has all the information I have on it for that load.
Okay, folks, I want to play you this One American News OAN report where they interviewed and talked to Jesse Morgan. I want you to hear what he had to say, what happened, and pay attention because this whole slip, this whole paper trail of what he was doing and what he's delivering is going to play large here. So once again, this is from December 19th, 2020, when we were all involved in Stop the Steal. Listen to what he says so you have the details of what I'm going to go through as I give you a synopsis of the Postal Inspector General's final report on Jesse Morgan and his delivery.
So I got my ticket and off I rolled to go to Bethpage, New York. I get to Bethpage, I check in at the guard shack out front. I go over to the door that he assigned me. I dock the trailer. I go inside, and as I go inside, this is when things kind of got a little different. So I always see an expediter when I go to a place. I see them whenever I go to a place and whenever I leave the place. So when I went in, I gave her the ticket. She said, "Hey, how are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm doing pretty good. How are you?" She said, "Good." She goes, "Guess what? Today you're going to be bringing back mail-in ballots." I'm psyched because I'm doing something to help out for the presidential race. You know, like this is cool, the election. You know, and all I know is I'm picking up the ballots from New York. I don't know if they're New York ballots. I don't know if they're Pennsylvania ballots. I don't know if they're California ballots. All I know is I'm picking up ballots in New York, headed for Harrisburg. I got my ticket and off I rolled. Part of me was wondering, like, you know, like I was excited, but then part of me was wondering also, like, well, why am I taking these things out of state from New York to PA? I don't know. I don't know what the proper process is, but I just know, like, I mean, I don't think you would take mail-in ballots out of one state to the other. Like, it just doesn't seem right, you know. Then I got I got to Harrisburg, and this is where things kind of got weird. So I pull in. And I made the wait, so I sat in the yard, and I sat there from 9:15 till a little after 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I ended up going in to get to figure out what was going on, and I went in, no one knew. I talked to an expediter. He said he doesn't know. He said, "Hold on, I'm gonna go get someone, find someone, you know." And that's whenever I talked to this transportation supervisor. He came down. He's like, "Hey, how are you?" I said, "Good. How are you?" He said, "Good." He said, "I'm transportation supervisor." He said, "Like, I'm going to need you to take this load out to Lancaster." And I said, "Well," I was like, "Why?" I was like, "That really doesn't make sense." This is what I told him. I was like, "This really doesn't make sense." I was like, "Why would I take it back to Lancaster?" I was like, 95% of this load is all for you. I was like, it would make more sense to leave the trailer here in this yard if that's the case, because I'm running out of hours, all right? And the guy said, "No, just take it back." And I said, "Okay." I was like, "Well, I'm not going to argue with the dude. I don't get paid to do that." And I said, all right. I was like, well, let me get a slip. And he said, no. I was like, well, I need a slip, you know. He goes, no. He's like, I'm not giving you a slip. I said, well, why aren't you giving me a slip? And he's like, well, you need to be unloaded. I was like, well, let me get a late slip at least, so that way I'm being paid for the 6 hours that I sat in the yard. He's like, no, you ain't getting no slip either, no late slip either. And he got kind of sarcastic. I got a little sarcastic. And I was like, whatever, I'm leaving. Then I drove the Lancaster, dropped the trailer off where I normally do. And then I dropped my truck off and got in my car, drove away. Came back the next day, and this is when it's even weirder. So my trailer that I had this trailer for the past month, 10R 1440. It's not there, and I'm sitting there. I'm like, where's my trailer at? You know, like the trailer's gone. No one knows. And this was the first and only time that I had mail-in ballots. First and only.
Now, for those of you that were paying attention to this at the time, remember when they were calling Jesse Morgan, oh, he must be some MAGA guy, and he doesn't like the fact that Joe Biden won the election and he's part of Stop the Steal. That turned out to be one of the many, many lies that we have now seen in the last over 2 years in the cover-up of the stolen election. Oh, we're going on 2.5 years now. Over 2.5 years. Wow.
I didn't vote for anyone. I'll be honest with you. I didn't vote for anyone. I just didn't want to, you know. I was talking to my mom, and she said, hey, she goes, I want you to talk to someone about the situation that you had, all right? And I said, okay. And I talked to them, and I told them everything I just told you. I didn't care who really won the election, but, like, standing there, I think the voting, the election, our vote, like, that's the one thing of us Americans that we have. And if you're going to start corrupting that, taking that away from us as Americans, we deserve to know the truth. We deserve to have an honest, fair election.
Folks, this should be a nonpartisan issue, even if you are deranged, I'm joking here, or maybe I'm not, enough to think that Joe Biden and the Democrats are the answer to America. You should still want, if you love America, to have a free and fair election system. And this is where I get really upset at my Democrat counterparts, my friends, family, and neighbors who still vote Democrat. I'm like, okay, it doesn't matter if you hate Trump. The ends don't justify the means. In a democracy, quote unquote, that they're always hammering, our democracy, our democracy. Well, actually, we're a constitutional republic with a representative form of democracy. But okay, let's go along with your democracy. Shouldn't our vote count? Shouldn't it be protected? And shouldn't mass evidence of fraud, rigging, irregularities, anomalies, whatever you want to call it, be investigated? No. Because I hate Trump. And this is where I part ways with the left, whether they're friends, family, or neighbors when it comes to politics. Because they don't care about America. They just care about their side and their winning. And they are our friends, family, and neighbors who are not in this fight. They're a big part of the problem in ushering this tyranny that is crushing all of us. And when they start complaining and bitching and moaning about stuff, hey, you asked for this. This is your side doing this. Yes, I've had that tough conversation with some people. And I'm sure many of you have had as well. All right, so let's get into the update now that we've reminded ourselves of what happened to Jesse Morgan. That was necessary so we can see how this is going down. We have a series of tweets here explaining some highlights of this report. And then I want to go into a little bit more in depth from a great article by Joe Fried over at the American Thinker. Let's start with the Twitter thread. Sunday on Twitter, Mark Menlovitz. Jesse Morgan, the truck driver who claimed to have driven hundreds of thousands of ballots from Bethpage, New York to Lancaster, Pennsylvania in October 2020 before his trailer disappeared, has been vindicated. The media personally smeared him, questioning, and you can see here that Mark is commenting and referencing and giving us a synopsis of the American Thinker article, which has some good stuff, so we're going to get into that. But he sets the stage here. His integrity and his bringing his past into the discussion because it couldn't refute his charges. The Post Office Inspector General quietly commissioned an investigation which apparently was completed over a year ago, but was just released for some mysterious reason. The report is heavily redacted and doesn't fully explain what happened to the truck full of ballots or the circumstances surrounding their transport. Of course, the gaslighting corporate media hasn't mentioned this story since 2020. Why would the disappearance of hundreds of thousands of ballots in a critical swing state, now officially confirmed by the Post Office OIG, be of concern to anybody but MAGA conspiracy nuts? It would be a shame if Congress were to call the U.S. Postal Service Inspector General and Jesse Morgan himself to testify on this matter, because we could find out the 2020 election wasn't quite as pure as it was sold to be. The question is, are Pennsylvania and Congress willing to investigate his story, or this story? P.S. Given that we know that the trailer went missing with hundreds of thousands of ballots, can anyone now claim that end-to-end chain of custody of ballots from printing to final counting is not critical, or that it was maintained here? All right. So now let's get into the details here. Let's go over to this great article by the American Thinker. So the article starts with bullet points and recap of what we heard Jesse Morgan talk about. That Jesse Morgan was a drove a tractor trailer for a contractor working for the U.S. Postal Service. And shortly after the 2020 election, he made the claims at a press conference. And these are the facts as stated by Jesse Morgan. Then on October 21st, he drove his truck from Bethpage, New York to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, loaded with as many as 288,000 completed ballots. In addition, there were 2 large trays of mixed mail bound for Lancaster. They were in front of the trailer. He drove the trailer to Harrisburg, but was not allowed to unload. After a 6-hour wait, he was told to drive to Lancaster without unloading at Harrisburg. In addition, the supervisor at Harrisburg refused to give him any paperwork to document his arrival in Harrisburg or his 6-hour wait, which normally would justify extra compensation. Morgan was perplexed by these instructions because 95% of the load was for Harrisburg, and that mail would have to be unloaded before anyone could get access to the Lancaster mail bins. After that, the Harrisburg mail would have to be returned to the trailer and given back to Harrisburg. Even for the government, that is slightly inefficient. As instructed, Morgan drove the tractor to Lancaster and parked it in his usual spot. The next morning, the trailer had disappeared without any explanation. The trailer and the ballots were gone, and no one would explain to Morgan or anyone else in the world what had happened. Now, you might think this is a yarn that Morgan made up, but you'd be wrong. In its highly redacted closing memorandum, the Post Office Inspector General does not deny that Morgan was a subcontractor truck driver who took mail from Bethpage to Harrisburg and then on to Lancaster. The OIG claims that Morgan identified the wrong trailer number and that his estimate of ballots could have been much lower. Your Honor, the guy came in and mugged me and pistol whipped me 7 times, robbed my safe, and pillaged and raped my wife. Sorry, sir. You were pistol whipped only 2 times. Your story is ridiculous. Oh, we're not going to refute that your wife was raped, that they stole money from your safe, or they even pistol whipped you, but you got the number of times that they slammed you wrong. This is what we're living through, folks. Does the post office keep a written record when it sends a big tractor trailer from one city to another? Or does it simply let the truck driver decide when and where to take their trucks? There are other suspicious tidbits in the closing memorandum. In the document, the Inspector General acknowledges that a contractor in Rochester, New York, printed 650,000 general election ballots that went to Pennsylvania. Of the total, 450,000 went to Philadelphia County and 200,000 to Chester County. In explaining how the printing company delivered the ballots to the Pennsylvania counties, the OIG stated the following. First of all, the name of the printing company is redacted. But this is what it says. Printing company explained, but could not confirm the ballots for both PA Board of Elections were most likely delivered to the respective locations by the delivery trucks or entered into the mail stream locally in Rochester, New York. So as Joe Fried here points out, that after a year of investigation, the Post Office Inspector General was still not sure if the 2 batches of printed ballots were shipped into Pennsylvania in trucks owned by the printing company or if they were taken by government trucks. And once again, wouldn't the post office know whether or not it delivered 650,000 ballots? And what about the printing company? It printed 650,000 general elections ballots, which would have cost close to $200,000. The unit cost for printed ballots is 29 cents in New York State. And the company doesn't seem to know a year and a half later how it managed to even get those ballots into another state. They're using the ignorance defense or strategy in this cover-up. So nor the government nor the contractor even know if they're responsible for, and if they were, how those ballots got there. Isn't that interesting? But you can feel the sarcasm coming through in Joe Fried's great reporting of this, or Joe Fried, when he says, but don't worry, according to the memorandum, more information is coming. And this is what the report says. The lawyer for the printing company, of course, both the printing company and the lawyer's name have been redacted, indicated that he would contact his client and confirm the transportation of ballots at a later time. Remember, this report is a year old, but we're just now seeing it. And here are the concluding remarks from Joe Fried. I wonder when the latter time will take place. After all, that statement was made in a final closing memorandum for which I could not find updates. I am not sure when the closing memorandum, which was dated on April 11th, 2022, so over a year ago, was finally posted to the OIG's website. I've tried multiple times to get that information using the right to know laws. Last year I was told that the information was being withheld to protect witnesses, victims, subjects, and law enforcement personnel to harassment and intimidation as a result of their association with the criminal matter. But then they changed the story on the reporter. A month or 2 ago, I was told that the information was being withheld to protect trade secrets or privileged or confidential commercial or financial information that could constitute an unwarranted invasion of the personal privacy of third parties. What sounds to me, folks, like they're trying to protect the printing company and the subcontractors. Remember, they never gave Jesse Morgan his slips. There's no paper trail. There's no paper trail. The reporter asked the post office people, he goes, if I ask again, the post office people will probably claim that the information vanished in a fire. I wish they would settle on one story. Flip-flopping. This is how liars do. They lie, then they lie to cover up their lie, then they lie about the lying that they did to cover up the lie. Then the story changes, and then they're ignorant and don't remember anything anyway. The article goes on to talk about an interview that Joe Hoft of the Gateway Pundit had with retired intelligence officer Tony Shaffer. I covered this at the time. Shaffer discusses his investigation of Jesse Morgan and Attorney General William Barr's threats that it shut down. That's right. AG Bill Barr shut down this investigation. The cover-up goes all the way up into high positions within the Trump administration. Shaffer was asked by members of the Pennsylvania Senate to thoroughly investigate Morgan's claims. He formed a special team of former postmasters who spent a week trying to determine if Morgan's story was feasible. Given normal post office procedures, they concluded it was feasible and that Morgan was credible. Shaffer then asked an acquaintance, former Attorney General Ed Meese, to call Barr to inform him of the findings. According to Tony Shaffer, no more than 10 minutes went by before Barr called him to tell him to stop investigating. Barr spent 20 minutes essentially yelling at him in a threatening way. Shaffer asked if Morgan could get a whistleblower status, and Barr refused. After that, Morgan dropped out of sight. Morgan later said that the FBI basically harassed him, was harassing my family, want to know how I came on TV. Did they seriously investigate his claims? Not to his knowledge, Jesse Morgan has never recanted his story. And of course, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania certified its 2020 election despite the undisputed fact that it had received 202,000 more ballots cast than voters. Nothing to see here, folks. Everything is just a conspiracy theory, and we're all nuts questioning. Just questioning, folks. Not even, obviously, draw the conclusion that's obvious. But even for questioning, we are tinfoil hat nuts. Eventually, Pennsylvania found more voters, but not enough. To this very day, it appears that there were 91,000 more ballots cast than identified voters. And of course, that's more than the winning margin by which Biden supposedly won the election. All right, folks, that's, I think, a pretty interesting and noteworthy update. And look at that, folks. We've come full circle talking about how everything is one big cover-up operation so that no one delves into, talks about, or proves, even though it's already been proven, that the 2020 election is stolen. They'll go through any lengths, including harassing an innocent man known as Donald John Trump or a host of other America First, America Constitution-loving patriots of all colors and either gender trying to expose the truth. Thanks for being here, folks. Hold tight. We'll be back tomorrow with yet another report here on the BCP Podcast.